This is a test of the Boundary Park alert system. Hello and welcome to yet another episode of the Boundary Park alert system with me, Matt Dean. I'm joined as always by my co-host Andy Halliwell. How are you doing, mate?
It's getting to feel like that, isn't it? Yet another.
I know. it's another long, hard season. Did you make the trip east from your West London abode yesterday, Andy?
I did, mate. Yeah, I went to the game. Yeah, we can talk about it if we must.
We must. Well, we could just have a general chat about, like man stuff with our fan guests between us. But I think people, for their sins, have tuned in to regurgitate the misery of yesterday. So we'll do that for them. But before we do, let's have an introduction to our fan guest.
When was your first game, fan guest?
Now, this is a question I don't like being asked because I have no idea. I used to get taken to games when I was a baby by my mum and dad. So, yeah, it's something that I always kind of regret that I've no first memory of a first game. I can remember early games, but I can't put them in any sort of chronological order. So,
give us
what's the first game you remember? Yeah.
A memory I have of an early game was, I think it was against Northampton Town, and it must have been in the 4th Division. And Northampton's goalkeeper was a guy called Kim Buck, who was the brother of Tony Buck at Man City.
Yeah.
And my cousin came along, they were visiting from Yorkshire. And when I found out that Kim Buck was in goal for Northampton, my sort of 5-6-year-old brain thought, oh, he must be decent because he's Tony Buck's brother. So I bet her, I can't remember what the prize was, but I bet her that we would lose, and we did. So that's an early memory from, that must have been late 60s, I would think. 69, yeah. Tony Buck was at City, wasn't he? So yeah, it would have been around then.
Yeah, I was just looking up Kim Buck, never heard of him. And yeah, he played for Northampton Town in the 1967 or something like that.
Yeah, so that would have been around then. I mean, that obviously it wasn't my first game, but it's something that for some reason probably the only time I've ever betted against Latics winning, I think, probably.
This is better than talking about yesterday anyway, just talking about who was your first favourite player then?
My first favourite, well, it was probably Jim Fryer. So it was great to have Sean on the other week on the phone in. That was lovely.
Yeah.
But I remember Maurice Whittle was probably my greatest early hero from that sort of era. I was absolutely obsessed with Maurice Whittle. And I remember buying a T-shirt from Tommy Field Market that had a number 3 on it in a sort of in his honour. So yeah, probably Maurice Whittle.
And later, of course, a pub in Oldham named after him. Whittles.
Yes, indeed.
Obviously, that we'll leave that in the dubious facts section, but it's
yeah.
Did Maurice Whittle score at York in that game when we got a point and went up, or in 73, 74? I think.
I think he did. I think it was a free kick, wasn't it? But that game's probably more. I mean, that game, we'd gone up the previous week. We'd beaten Huddersfield 6-0, and I think York needed a point that day to join us. And it ended 1-1.
Yeah.
And I can remember as we were leaving the ground, I mean, it was absolutely packed. And as we were leaving the ground, they announced over the PA system that City had beaten United and United had been relegated. And there was just a huge roar from like everybody. So like 20,000 people all sort of went up and cheered when that news came through. So that's my abiding memory of that game.
That's quite a good memory. Did we have? I felt like that game we had to get something out of it. Was that to win the league, to win the title, or did that come at a part of
that game later? We had to go to Plymouth on a Tuesday night, and we needed a point. It was the last game. I think it had been postponed from earlier in the season, and it was kind of tagged on at the end. So it was a Tuesday night in Plymouth, and there was no coverage like there is these days. And I can remember, I think the last 5 minutes commentary was on either Radio Manchester or Radio Piccadilly, and I remember listening to that, and it was 0-0. So we actually won the title, and we weren't there to see it. I think we've been to pretty much every game that season. I think it was one of the only ones we missed.
Yeah, Plymouth on is a big ask any for the best of time. But it's 50 years since it's the 50th year celebration of that promotion season this year. So we might as well talk about this because we're not going to achieve anything this season.
Yeah. Well, to be honest, my memories of that season are probably better than any other season before or since. So
does that lead nicely on to the next question, Andy?
What is your favourite Latics-related memory? It does lead on nicely, Matt. Yeah, because it is the Easter weekend, 1974, which was just 3 games in 4 days. We played Southport on Good Friday at home, won 6-0. Then we went to Bristol Rovers on the Saturday, and they were already celebrating being champions. They'd got all this merchandise printed out. And every shop window, I seem to remember, we parked as close to the ground as we could. And as we walked past, every shop window was like Bristol Rovers, 3rd Division champions, 1973-74. And we beat them 2-1 and got back just in time to watch it on Match of the Day, Saturday night. I think it was the main game, which was unusual in those days. And then the Monday, we went to Southport and won 2-0. And on the way to that game, I met Jack Charlton in a petrol station. He was at Middlesbrough and he was driving some of the players. I can't remember who they played. I think it might have been Bolton away. And we'd stopped for petrol. And my dad just went, Jack Charlton in that car in front. So I went and got his autograph. So that was a nice nice memory as well from that weekend.
So what is your memory there is of Easter weekend, which is of course next weekend, 50 years on from the promotion. So I'm really clutching at straws here that there's some kind of omen and football god play at work here, but I'm not entirely, as an atheist, I'm certainly not convinced that that's going to be the case. But let's move on to that. We've managed to do nearly 8 minutes without talking about yesterday.
We've also got to ask him the question, which is, give us a little unknown fact about yourself.
Yeah,
might as well talk about the Thai podcast.
Oh, I can do. I had one lined up. It wasn't that, but if you
want to do that,
let's do that as well. Let's delay the for longer.
I was going to slip that in later. But just before I do, going back to what you were saying about the 50th anniversary, they're getting all the remaining members of the championship winning side together, aren't they? It might be worth getting them to play a few games between now and the end of the season, actually. But a little known fact about myself. My band had the honour of being Steve Lamac's Single of the Week on the, whatever it was, Radio 1 evening session back in 1994.
Ooh, and what was the band and what was the song?
We were called American TV Cops, and the song was called Thirst. It was our first single, and he made it Single of the Week.
Fantastic. Have you got a digital copy of that?
I have, yeah.
Can you send it to me? I'll play it on our Look at Latics radio show.
Oh, that'd be great. Thank you.
Yeah. A bit of a
the royalties will come in handy, Matt.
I'm sure they will. Yeah, that's mint. That though, I used to listen to that. I remember that show. It was Steve Lamack and Joe Wiley in like the early 90s, pre-Britpop kind of era, when obviously 94 was. I mean, that was Britpop era, wasn't it? How come you didn't just accelerate into the forefront of Britpop? Why are we not talking about you in the same vein as Liam Gallagher, Damon Albarn, and Jarvis Cocker? Where did it all go wrong?
Well, it kind of all went right for quite a while. We had the Steve Lamack Single of the Week. We did a session for John Peel. We got quite a few high-profile supports, but we were all working as well. And we played in London quite a lot, and it was quite a slog. You do a day at work, you'd have to drive down to London, sound check, play the gig, drive back, and not getting in till the early hours and then getting up for work again. And I think you can only kind of be on the verge of a big break for so long.
Yeah.
And, it just kind of, we couldn't just make the next step. We weren't in a place where we could all pack our jobs in and, dedicate ourselves to it full time, which probably that's what it needed if we were going to make it. But I'm happy with what we achieved,
Who did you support and what venues did you play at? Fuck the football.
Well, we played with Smash, These Animal Men, Deus, Bush, Shed 7. Who else?
That's pretty good. That I remember all those bands. Yeah,
you must have been playing at places like the Astoria then and stuff like that.
We played. Where did we play? I think we only did one gig in Manchester because we were based in the Midlands. I was living in the Midlands then. We did the Manchester. Oh God, what was it called?
The Roadhouse, the Brick House.
In the City festival.
Oh,
we played at that. And bringing it back to football, I think Graham Lasaw was there that night. Graham Lasaw came to watch us. Pete Hook was definitely there, but the football connection, I'm sure Graham Lasaw was in. He was on the panel of judges or something. It was like it wasn't really a talent competition, but.
Yeah, but it was like, it's kind of like the big industry thing, innit? Industry get together in the city where all the A&Rs were there, weren't they? Like trying to find the next big thing and all that kind of stuff. So
yeah.
Anyway, so what was your role in the band before you reveal your name?
I was the guitarist.
Nice one.
Lead, rhythm?
Bit of both, really. We kind of interspersed. The lead singer also played guitar, so we kind of took it in turns.
So we know that you are the guitarist from was it American TV Cops?
Yeah.
Who are you then? What's your real name?
My name's Dale Farrington, lifelong Latics fan.
Thank you, Dale, for helping us avoid talking about the football or the present day football.
You can only put it off so long.
Yeah, for 12 and a half minutes, which is pretty good going, really. If anyone is still listening, having obviously tuned in for a review of yesterday, etc., then thank you for holding on. We are coming on to that. Andy, you were there.
Oh yeah,
Dale, we should say, Dale, you live in Thailand, don't you? Majority of the time.
I do, yeah. I kind of bounce between. I'm in England at the moment, but I bounce between here and Thailand. I was there permanently for nearly 25 years, but for reasons too complicated to go into it at the moment, I'm having to split my time between the two.
Yeah. Tax reasons or something like that. Anyway, but you're in the country. Were you in Dagenham yesterday, or was that just unachievable?
No, I watched it on National League TV, which was quite an experience.
Yeah. It was non-league day yesterday, and in nowhere did it feel more non-league than National League TV. Watching Dagenham and Redbridge's very, very amateur effort at getting that game streamed. But Andy, it can only have been worse in reality. So give us your assessment of the view from the terraces yesterday, please.
Oh God, I mean, it was summed up beautifully by my 4-year-old child, who, after about 25 minutes, just grabbed me by the coat and went, "Dad, can we go home now?" It was dire, wasn't it? It was. We talked last week when Paddy was on about what latics are you going to get. I mean, they weren't as bad as Aldershot. They were miles worse than they were at the weekend against Chesterfield the weekend before. And there was just no urgency, was there? It wasn't. I guess my overriding sort of summary was, it wasn't that they weren't trying. It's just that they weren't very good, or they aren't very good. And there's, McGay. I mean, I'm not picking anyone out here. That the whole team was as abject as everybody else. I don't think anyone comes out with flying colours. But when you got McGay at right back, he's a bomb scare when they went down the left with a bit of pace. He's got a round peg in a square hole. You've got. I mean, Walker. I couldn't beat an egg, could he? He was pretty abject as well. Tom Conlon. I've absolutely no idea what Tomlin is supposed to be doing, but he's not doing any of the things that he's supposed to be there for. I mean, that was it a corner or a free kick? I can't remember. Just before he was hauled off by the manager. It was I was like, he's said the guy. That's a free kick, dead ball specialist. That and yes, take him off, throw him in the dressing room, lock the keeper. Absolute dire stuff. I mean, it was awful. And you sort of feel for. I mean, Andrew Dallas's first touch. I talked about it last week again yesterday. Like it hits him and it just bounces off him. Like it's almost like a shock that's coming. There's no cushioning the ball into. It's just ba-dung, ba-dung, like a pinball machine. Yeah, it was bad. It was bad. And you've just got to come to the conclusion and realization that this team just isn't very good. And there are some reasonable individual players in there. There are one or two players that surrounded in a better cohesive team you would presumably get more out of. But in that particular setup, there is still no creativity in the centre of midfield. There are some players here now that are just they've got 6 games left at Latics and that's it, and then they'll be done probably, because I don't think we'll make the playoffs at the minute. You never say never, but we're going to have to win like 5 of the last 6 probably, including winning away at Halifax and Altrincham in order to be sure of doing it, which I don't think we'll do. So we're just going to have to come to the reality that it's going to be another season down here, and hopefully the summer recruitment gets better. But I don't get the vitriolic booing. I just don't get it. Well, I don't see why, to what end it serves, because all it does is create problems.
For the people that weren't there yesterday, the people that haven't seen the reactions on social media, I think it's fair to say that at the end of the game there was 2 cohorts in the away end, wasn't there? There were the people who clapped the team off, and there was the people who booed the team off. It seemed to be the case.
But I also want to add here that many people probably wouldn't have clapped, but only clapped as an antidote to the booing, because a lot of people, probably myself included, would have just walked out and done nothing, just scoop the kids up, and gone out. But because people are like literally spitting at them and like, in terms of their facial expression, angry, booing, throwing their arms, just sticking. Some people ran down to the front to like give them abuse.
Yeah.
Like, and quite a few people were trying to tackle it. What is the point? And then it's, and it sparks up in the stand, because it's just, what's the point? Like, he's not going to achieve anything. You're not going to make them go, oh yeah, sorry, we'll try a bit harder next time. That was it. That was as good as they are. It's just, you don't support a very good team. Get used to it. We haven't supported a very good team for a long time. So it will get better, but you're just going to have to be patient. And like having a paddy in a tantrum like a child, it's just pathetic. What's the point?
Dale, watching it on National League TV yesterday, we'll come on to that point that Andy's made in a sec. But I want to just counter it with the opening. I mean, they seem to have a camera operator who was on work experience and was drunk yesterday, so that was a bad combination. They also had only initially when the game started, they only had 1 microphone working, so you were only hearing half of the conversation, and that was the conversation half of the conversation being delivered by Frank. I think Frank Vincent, I think he was called, who was a Dagenham player who'd broken his arm and wasn't involved in the game. So that was quite funny, very non-league, but you could hear the Latics fans loud and clear right from the kickoff, making loads and loads of noise. Really good turnout again from the Latics fans. Absolutely brilliant. Massive credit to those, particularly those who travel distance, whether it's from up north or from the other side of the country, whatever it is, brilliant. And, it's always great to be able to hear that kind of level of atmosphere and noise. But obviously the performance did not match that level of support early on, particularly. I think what Andy was saying about, the way that the team performed, I think that the obvious element to that, and I think we were a little bit unlucky yesterday insofar as we had some illnesses that ruled out. Josh Lundstrom finally had a decent game last week, and then he gets ill and he's not playing. He's not in the team yesterday. Walker comes in. We've all been saying, "Where's Walker been?" He didn't. He hardly got a kick in that first half. So we were a bit unlucky. But when the midfield, Dale, doesn't perform, the team doesn't perform, does it? That was my really sort of like key takeaway, if you like, from yesterday is when the midfield just didn't do what it was doing against Chesterfield, wasn't pressing, wasn't winning the ball, wasn't on the game, and once that fell down, it was like watching the Latics scenes that we've been watching for the last 2 seasons, wasn't it?
It was. I mean, I think Andy nailed it. Really, it was absolutely spot on. You know, we've got to accept that we're not a very good side. What you were saying about the commentary, I mean, the first sort of 15 minutes or so was just hilarious when you had the so-called expert summariser and you could just hear his comments, and then there were like 2 minutes of silence. But I think, I mean, you said there, Matt, you know, the fans, it sounded great on the TV. You know, you could hear them loud and clear. When the commentary was actually up and running, they were very complimentary about the support that the away fans were giving them. Obviously, they were impressed by the numbers that had travelled. But I agree with Andy. I don't get that. I really don't. And it is counterproductive. You know, there is no use. I mean, I can understand people being frustrated. That's absolutely fine. But it isn't really going to achieve anything, is it? It's not going to make them better players, which ultimately we want. And I'm disappointed to hear that, because you know, even though it was an awful game, and they said on the commentary, didn't they, that the two sides cancelled each other out. And I think that was a pretty fair summary. Dagenham didn't offer much either, did they? They had a couple of, you know, reasonable. I think they hit the post, didn't they, at one point? And then there was one, a bit of a scramble. And then obviously we had that one right at the end when Fondop really should have scored. But it was a nothing game, wasn't it? It was just pretty desperate all round, I think.
Yeah, it was. But the frustration for me there, though, is in that situation, what you're looking for is your team to take the game by the scruff of the neck. If it's one of those games that, like I said about the midfield, just, you know, Dan Gardner playing out on the left, Ethan Walker out on the right. I think that Ethan Walker's left-footed, Dan Gardner's right-footed. So I'm not quite sure what the thinking was there. Nathan Sherring in the middle with Conlon. When Nathan Sherring was having... Oh, look, if you go on Twitter, you check out the social media comments, you've got all the comments ranging from, you know, one end of the spectrum to the other. Nathan Sherring had a poor game yesterday. His touch was terrible. His passing was terrible. You know, but you see that when he does have an off game, what a difference it makes. Because I think he has. I know, Andy, you're not like a massive fan of his in terms of his technical ability, but you know, he can leave an impression on a game, and he didn't yesterday. He was poor, but like I say, he's not the only one who had a poor game. It was just, we didn't step up to the plate like we did last week, where it was a case of the midfield and the team were playing higher up the pitch. They were forcing Chesterfield into mistakes. They were cutting off the options. They were doing the right things, and they were getting the chances, and they were playing good football as a result of it. Yesterday, the game was there for the taking for them to do that. And between them, they couldn't muster it. And what it seems is, it doesn't seem like just the odd player like Nathan Sherring might have had a particular off day yesterday. The rest of the team don't make up for it. The rest of the team don't carry it. The whole team seems to have an off day on the same day over and over again. And that's what really frustrates me. It's just, I can't get my head around it. And I'm sure Mickey Mellon must feel the same. But
I came out and I was chatting to Ryan Hamer on the way out. And Ryan Hamer summed it up pretty well in as much as he said, how often do we play the opposition? And the sort of pattern of the game is dictated by how the opposition play.
Yeah.
So the opposition dictate the pace, whether it's a fast-paced game or a slow-paced game, or a long ball game, or a blood and thunder game, or a passing game. It's not. We never sort of dominate or imprint our authority on the game. It's never the pattern of the game is never dictated by how we want to play. But, you know, probably save last week against Chesterfield was where we did for that first half, especially. It's sort of the pattern of the game sort of takes shape by how Dagenham are playing, and we react to how they play, and then sort of fit into the same mold and format, and it just becomes a bit turgid and a bit scrappy. Because this is, you know, if you listen to Mellon's interviews, they're often, it was a tough game, it was a scrappy game. It's like, yeah, they're scrappy every week, because we just it's almost like we settle in and go, how do you want to play, Dagenham? Oh, that's how you want to play. Well, we'll join in and do the same. and it just becomes a bit stalemate. And there isn't, it's just a lack of quality. But you take like again, I'm not digging the individuals out. There was no individual any worse than any other or any better than any other yesterday. It was just a poor team performance. But if we're going to want to go up, you're going to need a better centre midfielder than Nathan Shearer, I'm afraid. You cannot. For as many games as he runs around, puts tackles in and sort of does okay, and you think, oh, he's contributed today, he doesn't affect enough games, enough of the time, for a team that wants to be going.
Yeah, I know what you're saying, right? But I feel like he gets a bit of a hard time because if you think of he chips in with goals. He's one of the only midfielders in that side who chips in fairly often with goals. Conlon's come in and he's supposed to be the better footballer. He played at a high level, played for England C at the weekend and all this, right? He hasn't stepped up to the play. He can't even hit a corner or a free kick, like from a standing still ball. So, he's the one who's come in with a bit of pedigree, promotions, captain of Port Vale and all this, right? It's all very good on paper, but it means absolutely jack shit if you can't, it's a decent cornering, for example. So Sherrin has a job. He's there to be a nuisance. He's there to press. He's best when he's at playing higher up the pitch and he's pressing the opposition and he's, getting pop shots in at the way, at the edge of the area. And, he, like I say, he does chip in. So I think actually over the course of the season, Nathan Sherrin's been our best midfielder, right? And that might suggest that the rest of the midfield hasn't been very good, which is fair enough. But he has been our best midfielder this season. I think he's been our most consistent and you give him a job.
And that's why we're ninth.
Right, but you give him a job to do, he goes out and he does it. The guys who are supposed to play with the ball, because Sherrin's not the player who's supposed to play with the ball. He's supposed to win the ball and cut off space and do all that stuff. And I think he does his job most weeks. I think, which is that. But the others haven't stepped up, and that midfield. The point coming back round to now, and this is kind of like linking back to what you were saying about the boos and the frustration and all that kind of thing, is that midfield and that team hasn't, you look at performances like yesterday, hasn't evolved much from last season. And the manager was David Unsworth. Now it's Mickey Mellon. There are people who are starting to compare Unsworth and Mellon in terms of tactics and all that. There's, we were chatting on social media, we're speculating, we're talking about, in our text groups, who's in the right, who's in the wrong. Is it the players? Is it the manager? Is it this? Is it that? The stats from this year is in 2024, since we kicked off the season with, and this is just in the league, taking into account that we did actually lose it to Hendon as well. But let's gloss over that. 2024, we've won 5, drawn 6, and lost 3 in 2024. So that, I think that kind of like sums up the inconsistency. Too many draws, that'll absolutely kill you. In March, we've won none, drawn 4, and lost 1. So in March, coming into the season where we started off in the playoffs, right in the mix, that's our March. So we've bottled it big time when it comes to the playoffs, and it has to be on the players for me. And so then you come back round to the reaction from the crowd yesterday and the fans letting the players know that they think that is not good enough. I tend to agree with you, Andy, that spitting vile and animosity and all that towards the player doesn't help. It's kind of it kind of counters the brilliant support that went on before it. I just think it doesn't cancel it out, but it sort of waters it down a little bit. And I think that might be the perspective of the players. I think we've heard from Liam Hogan, we've seen his reaction. It's kind of like it does affect the players. And I'm not saying, look, this is the thing. We go round and round in circles, don't we, Dale? We talk about it on the podcast all the time. What's the appropriate response to things? People will always turn around and say, I paid my money, I can boo if I want. Then you'll have the people say, well, that doesn't do any, it's counterproductive. And we just end up going around in circles, don't we? So I mean, thinking back to the 73-74 season, like, what can you remember what it, I mean, even not that far back, but I guess you've always had two camps, haven't you, within the fan base? You've got the more sort of glass half full and the glass half empty fans, regardless of if you're in the situation we are now, which is kind of very sort of tepid, or whether we're even like towards the top of the league and achieving stuff. What do you make of it, Dale?
Well, I like I said earlier, I agree with what you both said. Really, I don't. It's not something I do. I think you said the other week, Matt. Full time, if you're feeling annoyed, frustrated, or whatever, just walk away. You don't have to clap them. You don't have to boo them. Just leave the ground and sort of reflect on it yourself. I mean, it's interesting because in Thai football, You don't get that. You don't get fans turning on their team at all. The complete opposite happens. If they play badly, the team will come and line up in front of the main body of support at the end of the game, regardless whether they've won, lost, whatever, if they've been hammered 7-0 at home. And the fans will sing the club song to them. And it's the contrast between those two things is quite fascinating. Having experienced that, that where they don't vent the frustrations at the players. And it doesn't seem to have any effect one way or another. It doesn't, they don't come out next week as world beaters. But it is that something.
Is that something to do with Thai culture and the sort of the deference that they have? So it's a much more sort of like deferential kind of country, isn't it? And like they're a bit more polite as a rule, I think. You know more than me. I've been there. I spent quite a long time there in the past, so I kind of got that feeling. I don't know. Is that something that there's a stark difference between? Is it just that, like, the passions run a bit deeper in English football? I mean, going back, it probably goes back further. There's a lot more kind of heritage to it and stuff like that. But I don't know. What do you make of it?
I mean, the passion is that. I mean, during the 90 minutes, you'll get the usual sort of comments you get at English games. Fans will vent the frustrations in certain ways, but as soon as the final whistle goes, that's it. It's over. The game's finished, and you're there. You celebrate with, and they all do a lap of honour every single game. They go around lap of honour. They all do a lap of the pitch.
They acknowledge the fans.
Yeah, and even the away supporters. They'll go in front of the away fans, and the away fans will chant the team name, the opposition team name. So it is very, very different in that respect. So maybe I've become a little bit soft, and
that'll be making some of our listeners physically sick now.
Oh yeah, it's hard. I mean, I've never done it. It's something that's so deeply ingrained in me.
There's things in German football culture, isn't there, and maybe in Italian as well, where like a member of the ultras will like address the team at the end of the game if they've had a bad game and give them a telling off. It was part of that culture. You sort of see videos of that, and imagine that in our culture, it'd be terrible, wouldn't it? It wouldn't work.
We have to take a zoom. I think this is where we've been coming at it from. I mean, I'm ready for a summer break, Andy. I'm not going to lie. Talking about this now, it's kind of like, have we met the players? Then we have to keep doing podcasts and stuff. We have to extend it. It's like, oh God, do we have to? Like with just the expecting, coming out just end it all in at the end of April. But it's taking that zoom out again, isn't it? It's that, you've got different personalities within the fan base. You've got thousands of unique personalities, and those personalities might fall into sort of broader personality groups and traits, and the way that we respond to things and everything else. But there are the people who respond well to and see a sort of like the bigger picture, if you like, and sort of think, well, okay, like I think what our general perspective is, which is a little bit more, okay, well, we're in this kind of process of rebuilding now, and as much as we would expect better from the players, we kind of, like we said the other week, hope, expectation, and reality. And then there's the others who just think, no, that was shit, and it's not good enough, and we're angry about it. And I guess at the end of the day, everyone's entitled to manage their own emotions and have their own opinions accordingly, regardless of what everybody else thinks and whether we think it's counterproductive or not. At the end of the day, that's the way people respond. Go on, Dale.
I've got a theory, and you kind of touched on this the other week. I can't remember if it was the phone-in or the podcast, but you were saying because we've had such a high turnover of players, we don't form the relationships that you normally do with a player who's at your club. I've very fond memories, going back to that 73-74 team. I could still name the team. The 11 plus the one substitute that played every single week, plus a couple of reserves that were brought in. But I mean, I'd if I met one of these guys in the street, I wouldn't recognise them now.
And well, there wasn't 32 of them in that squad.
No, there weren't. That was about 13, I think.
Yeah.
But do you think that plays a part as well? Because you don't have that relationship with the players. You don't have a bond. So they see them as people who've just, they're just passing through, a lot of them. And that could be
I think that is I think that's part of it. I really do. I think that you need to. Well, I think that's part of it, but also like if you think back to like your favorite players and stuff like that, so that we get people saying, we ask people who their favorite players were. As a rule, do your favorite players, do you think, or the most popular players, are they the ones that come into a club and hit the ground running, as opposed to those that are a slow burn? Can we think of a sort of like, especially when someone comes in with a bit of fanfare? Do you remember like when Paul Molden came in, for example? He's like, he'd scored like 100 million goals in youth football and stuff like that, and everyone was expecting him to be brilliant, and he wasn't, and all that kind of thing. Does a lot of it come from sort of expectation and pedigree and all that kind of thing? Like Gunnar Haller's often mentioned, and he came in and he was at it straight away and things like that. And I don't know. What do you think? Does a player make an impression straight away, or can it build a bit over time? What do you think?
I think it can be both, can't it? I am struggling now to think of someone who's been like a slow burner, but I'm sure it must have happened.
Well, for me, do you remember Kieran Lee? So when Kieran Lee came in, we got him from United, didn't we? From United's youth team. He was a slow burn in and out of the team, playing as right winger to begin with. Didn't look really lightweight, not really very good. Then all of a sudden got moved to right back and became a world beater. Was brilliant. Probably our best player for 2 seasons before moving on to Sheffield Wednesday. He was a slow burn. So it does happen.
It does happen, yeah. But I think going back to like as a fan base, how we are as a character, what our characters are, we're not, I don't think, particularly patient with the slow burners, are we? I don't think, as a rule. I think we're kind of like, I think that we make our minds up fairly quickly about players, regardless of whether or not that's actually justified, and maybe that sometimes has a negative effect on them. That's my view of having supported Latics for a long time. But it's a good point that you bring it up. I know we've mentioned it before, Dale, but I do every week on Latics Mind, and we might get some today when you have your goal. But there's players mentioned, and you're just like, oh God, I forgot about him. I don't even remember them sometimes, because they were flashing the pans at Latics, weren't they? And so I think you need to have that spine of your squad that is there for a few seasons, and you can get to know each other. You can build a relationship with each other. Yeah, and like you said earlier, there's no one who stands out, is there? I mean, I think you mentioned Fondop a couple of weeks ago, and he's probably the only one that there seems to be some sort of bond there. And obviously, you've had him on the phone in, and that's the kind of we should have 7 or 8 of those players in the team or in the squad. For me, and I know it's probably the way football's going now, and you do get a much higher turnover, especially at Oldham the last few years. But it'd just be nice if somebody sort of made an impression and you could get behind them, and you just knew that we like a trier, don't we? You think back to people like Ernie Cooksey. Someone like that. Not the most gifted footballer, but somebody who'd always go out, give 100%. You knew that his heart was in it. You knew that he was playing for the badge. He was playing for the fans. And that's really all we ask. Even if we are a poor side, you just want players who are going to go out there and represent Oldham Athletic. And let's bring in this point now then, which is something that's been cooking away on social media for the last 24 hours. And that's James Norwood, right? So because he's the marquee signing, he's the big name, he's supposed to be the player that we can all get behind and say, yeah, he's an instant kind of hero in that respect, top scorer. But there are people saying that he doesn't necessarily appear like he 100% wants to be here. You mentioned this last week, Andy, where you were talking about the kind of that when are we all on the same page? You mentioned Mike Fondop. Dale, the Garner-Fondop pairing when Norwood was out injured was effective. They were both scoring goals. I've seen it raised on social media, so I wanted to put it to you too. Bringing Norwood back in when we had what was a fairly effective strike partnership in Garner and Fondop, was that the right thing to do? Bearing in mind we've not won a game in March, we've drawn 4 and lost 1.
I just don't think it makes any difference, particularly because if you'd have had Garner and Fondop in the team yesterday, they'd have got the same service broadly that Dallas and Norwood got, which is scraps and not a lot. So I'm not sure it would have made a great deal of difference. The problem is still in the midfield's inability to dominate a game, dominate possession, and create for the front line. I don't really care about Norwood's Maybe he's not overly enamoured. I don't know. I think he's that way. I think he's just that way inclined. I've got a mate who's an Ipswich fan, who both Garner and Norwood were at Ipswich, and when he tells me about Norwood, he says Norwood looked disinterested at Ipswich quite a lot of the time. You know, he was quite sort of still well connected at Tranmere. I don't know whether that plays a role, whether the fact that he knows that Lattis and Tranmere have had a bit of needle over the years and he's still a bit loyal towards Tranmere. I don't really know, and I don't really care. So long as he scores goals, I'm not that bothered. I don't care he doesn't celebrate. I don't care he doesn't smile. You know, if he puts it in, it's great. He didn't not try yesterday. He just didn't have anything to work with. He didn't get the opportunity. There was no balls pulled back to him for him to have a shot at goal. There was no balls over the top for him to run onto. There was nothing into his feet particularly. He was trying to get a hold of it in the air. He's not he's not rubbish in the air, but he's not the best. And then you come back to, it's like the Sheeran conversation. If we want to go up, Mike Fondop's a cult figure. He could have, should have scored. It looked like a decent save at the same time. He didn't seem to do everything wrong with it. He got it. He kept it down. He hit it reasonably hard. It just didn't go in. But if you're gonna want to go up, you're gonna need a better striker than Mike Fondop. You're gonna need a better midfielder than Nathan Sheeran. You're gonna need a better centre back than Liam Hogan.
So what's your view on it, Dale?
Well, I think it's interesting what you were saying about Norwood, Andy. I mean, I'm the same. I mean, players bring different things to it, don't they? And the way they behave and the way they act. We've had all different types over the years. I can remember Roger Wilde used to love the crowd and he'd stand there conducting them when they were singing his name and all this kind of stuff. And Norwood's like the polar opposite of that. And as long as he is scoring and as long as he's performing, then yeah, I totally agree, Andy. But I think someone with his experience and his pedigree and the fact that he is a big name signing relatively, he should be doing more, I think. He can't allow his personality to stop him influencing or encouraging the rest of the team. That's the kind of player that the others need to be looking to. He should be the one who's geeing him up. Because we don't have anybody to do it, do we? I don't think I've seen anyone just going round, geeing everyone up, trying to get them playing. We definitely miss that. Someone who's got those qualities. And I think, whether it's Norwood's personality or not, that's the role he should be fulfilling to a certain extent.
I always think it's difficult for a striker to do that job. When you're up the end of the pitch, where you're not in the middle of the game affecting it, you're waiting for balls to run onto or balls that are pulled back to you or stuff to be created for you to be the finisher. That the type of organizer, the leader, the captain of a team, the one who gets them going, invariably is a centre midfielder or a centre half, isn't it? Those are the positions. You don't tend to make your centre forward a captain. So, if you think about any Latics team of old where they had, somebody running the game, it was the midfielder, whether that was Sheridan, whether that was Wellens, whether that was Mike Milligan, whoever it was someone in the centre of the park or a centre back organising. So I think it's difficult for a striker to do that. We don't have that player in the pitch who's able to do that. Paul Murray or someone who's just running up and down the pitch, getting everyone organised, geeing everyone up, dictating the play.
We have Liam Hogan, who's the captain, and he's fairly vocal, and he's that kind of character. Got Norwood up top, and I think he's that kind of character. You see him, having a go at players and doing all that. But fundamentally, we're missing that character in the centre of midfield. That's the thing. We are missing that. A good team will have a very vocal goalkeeper, a very vocal centre half, at least one, a very vocal central midfield player, and a vocal player up top. You need it. But what we're lacking, the reason why we're not challenging at the top end, we're certainly not going to congratulate Chesterfield on winning the league, but they did win the league this weekend. So, fair play to them. But I'm sure that with over the course of the season, there's been a lot more. I've only seen him play a couple of times. Last time I saw him play was against us, and they didn't play great, and against Dorking they didn't play great. But I'm sure they've got more characters throughout the team, and people who roll the sleeves up and affect the game. Now, my own limited experience of playing football is it's in your head as much as it's in your body. You've got to believe that you can affect a game as an individual. You've got to. When you go out on that pitch, like, it's up to you to think. You go out there every week, whether you're playing centre half or if you're playing centre midfield, and you think, I'm going to score the winner today. If I'm a centre half, I'm thinking, I'm going to win that header for a corner, I'm going to score a goal, I'm going to get the last-ditch tackles in. If I'm in the midfield, I'm going to win my battles, I'm going to play that through ball, or I'm going to take a shot from the 18-yard, I'm going to score. You go out there with that mindset, I'm going to affect the game. And if everybody around you in that team isn't playing to the level that you expect and you feel you're delivering, then you try and get them up to that level. And it's on everybody in that team to do that. And that is why we are so far off Chesterfield this season. It's not just purely on ability, it's the mindset. We've talked about it all season, the mentality where they're not demanding enough of each other on the pitch. They're not. Yesterday, so many performances, I'd be expecting the players to be turning around to each other, and I've seen it from Norwood saying, "What are you doing there?" Like, and absolutely digging each other out on the pitch, expecting more, and going up to the fans at the end of the game with need be, and holding your hands up and saying that wasn't good enough. I'm sorry, we weren't good enough. We'll try and fix it next week, because it's on them. We've had Mellon, we've had Unsworth, we've had Thompson. You know, it's on the players now. I'm prepared at this stage to not start losing my rag about it, because we're a team, we're a club that is rebuilding. And unfortunately, we're just not there yet. I think next season, because I think we're done. I think there's no chance of us going up now into through via the playoffs. I thought after the Kidderminster game that was the acid test. We failed it massively. And I don't think we're going to go up, right? So next season is the big one. And this manager that we've got now, Mickey Mellon, has got all the credentials. He's got all the, he's won the promotions and all that. He's supposed to know what it takes to build the right kind of team. We have to trust that he's going to do that. And the team next season has to look a lot closer to that finished article than it does right now. And because ultimately, like we've said, too many square pegs in round holes, not enough characters, not enough consistency. And he's been saying it, we got to the point, Andy, in the podcast where we were just sort of like saying, we don't want to repeat what Mickey Mellon's saying all the time, but there's work to do. There's work to do. There's work to do. And he said it very early. And I think that maybe he was saying what he was saying early doors because he was having the experience that he's got of seeing and building squads. And he came in there and realised pretty early, I ain't got what it takes here. This we haven't got what it takes as a team. So there are those that are arguing on social media and stuff that the signings that he's made haven't lived up to expectations. I would temper some of that and say, right, well, let's get this season out of the way, pre-season, additions to the squad, and let's judge it all a little bit more. I think we're in a bit more of a position to judge Mellon as a manager and his ability to build a squad and a team next season than we are this season. So I'm frustrated. I was hoping that we'd be comfortably in the playoffs by now and starting to think about how we prepare our squad for the playoff campaign. But it's going to go right to the wire. And if we make it, great, because I think it's going to be a great experience for the squad. But like you said, Andy, whether or not we can actually go to Halifax and Altrincham and pick up wins, I don't know. So anyway, I feel like I went on a bit of a rant there, but yeah, that's how I'm feeling right now.
That Halifax result, I mean, you don't know what happens, and you don't know what happens to the other teams. They could have a terrible end, but that Halifax result in the week where they beat Chesterfield 4-2 was a bit of a sickener because that opened up a bit of a gap. And yeah, I'm sort of the view that we won't make it, and we've just got to come to terms with it. And as frustrating as it is what it is. It could be a lot worse.
I think on the point about the crowd and the fans and stuff like that. I mean, we've got 6 games to go. It pays to just do more of what we did for the 90 minutes and less for the 90 seconds after the game. I think more of the encourage you until it's mathematically not possible. You get behind them and let's try as a collective to get to the playoffs and and then we'll just have to reset. We'll all take a break over the summer, and we'll come back with renewed optimism, only to lose 4-0 away at Oldham on the first game of the season next season, or whatever it is. No. Have you? How are you? What's your overall view, Dale? How are you? Are you quite sanguine like me and Andy about it all, or are you?
Yes, I am. I don't think we'll make the playoffs. I had my doubts even when we broke into the top 6 or 7. There just wasn't. It just didn't feel like that's where we were heading. You know, there wasn't the excitement, and again the performances, and it's quite worrying. I didn't realise our form was so bad. Those statistics you read out earlier, that's quite shocking. You know, two wins and 2 defeats from those 4 games would be 2 points better off, wouldn't we? So
yeah,
I don't understand. I don't understand how we. Well, do we set up? I don't know. I mean, yesterday was just. It was just so poor, you know. And following on. I mean, how many false dawns can we have? I mean, when you do the phoning, you've got the unknown pleasures thing behind you, and I always think new dawn fades. That's the most appropriate sort of backdrop to this season, I think, because every time we think we've turned a corner, like the Chesterfield game, we just brought crashing back down to earth again, aren't we? With another desperate performance. And I think
when we talk about false,
I think we've got to look. We've just got to look to next season now, like you say, get behind the team for the remaining 6 games or whatever it is, and then hopefully in the summer we can have a big clear out, and Mellon can work his magic on the training pitch. I know that'll get some laughs from certain people, but yeah, you've got. I think you've got to trust in the system, and you know, just this season, just you know, write it off, and next season that's when it begins in earnest. I think because we can't afford another year in this league, can we?
It's look. I mean, it's all part of. It is all part of a process. It's the evolution of the squad. It's the evolution of the club. It is evolving. It's not devolving. You know, we're not going backwards.
Evolving,
evolving, whatever it is. We are going forward slowly but surely. We are getting better players in. I think the frustration lies probably more than anything this season with the fact that last season and the season before, you're looking at the squad, you're looking at the players, and you're thinking your expectations from those players isn't very high because they're not very good. Whereas now you're looking at some of the signings and some of the players and some of the pedigrees, and you're thinking we expect more. And I think that's the nucleus of the frustration of those fans that are really sort of like a bit more vitriolic about it. They're kind of like, you're supposed to be better than this, shows you better than this, and that's where that comes from. And I do get that. I do think that next season will be better again than this season. I just hope we don't, like I said, we've not won a game in March. So is the game against Fylde is the last game in March, isn't it, at home next week on Friday? So we need to book that trend. We don't want to go through the whole of March without winning a game. We need to win our home games. I mean, our home form in 2024, we've won 2, drawn 3, lost 2. So, that's this year's form. It's not good. I think we've won 6 at home all season. It's just
and lost 6 at home all season. I think we've got the third worst home record in the division. Only a couple of teams in the relegation places are worse than us. York being one, Oxford probably the other.
Yeah.
I mean, I was looking at someone had posted on social media. In the games since Mickey Mellon's been in charge, we're still 6th, 26 points, 42 games. The other teams that are in and around there, Halifax, Aldershot, Southend and Fylde are all up there with us over that same period because they've all had, So it's not like, it's not like he's had, I think he's won 11, drawn 9, lost 6 or something like that. It's not the worst. For him, he's done okay. I think he's got to be careful with the narrative, Mickey Mellon, hasn't he? Because he sometimes the narrative begins to slip into, we were miles off the playoffs. We were near the bottom when I came in. You're like, hang on a minute. We were about where we are now, mate. Let's not be daft. But his record is okay with the team he's got. But it's all about recruitment. We've got to get better players through the door, and we've got to move on a lot of players, haven't we? Somehow.
And we've got to find that identity. We've got to find that way of playing. Like you said before, Dale, we've got to impose our game on the other players on the other team. We've got to start doing that. That's what championship winning teams do. That's what promotion winning teams do. Whether it's dragging you down to the level and just out, muscling you and all, whatever it is, or outplaying you or whatever it is, we've got to do that next season. And that has to be now. Mellon has to. I'm sure he is. He must be looking at who he wants to bring in, how he wants to play, where the weakest areas of the squad are, and all that. But like we did this season with that, insipid, I can't remember what other chain of adjectives you used, Andy. But, over the summertime now, we've got to have that process of bringing the players in and building the optimism, and then seeing that on that first game of next season, what this team's all about. And there'll be people saying, look, we're still in with a chance of making the playoffs. What are you talking about next season for? But it's just felt like for the last month, in fact, we haven't won a game in 5. That's pretty much it, really. There's teams that are even like Halifax seems to be getting into a bit of form, and we're just not. So I don't fancy us now at this stage, but I'll be delighted to be proven wrong. And that would next week's. We've said it a few times now. It really is like next weekend now. Easter weekend really is make or break, isn't it? If we beat Fard and we beat Altrincham, the point at Dagenham doesn't look too bad. But if we don't win those 2 games, I think we're really going to be off the pace, aren't we? So anyway, let's see if Dale can keep up to the pace with Latics mind. Obviously, you have the rather enviable position of following Paddy from last week, who
no
I believe got something like 1 answer right per second or something like that. He got 11, which was very, very good. So, good luck with that one. Let's hope you get lots of questions about the 1973-74 season.
Oh, yeah. Anything pre-1980.
So, fingers crossed.
Les Pogliacomi had an injury-hit season in 2004-05. Name one of the other goalkeepers used that season.
Pass.
What colour was Latics away kit in 1997-98?
White.
And the maroon, I'll give you that.
Maroon, yes. Maroon down the sleeves, isn't it?
Latics have been in the playoffs 3 times. In which season did Latics placed highest?
That would be 86, 87.
Correct. Which footballer turned Hollywood star scored against Latics in the 93-94 season?
Vinnie Jones.
Correct. What colour was Latics away kit in 2009-10?
Yellow and blue.
No, it was navy and orange. Who wore the number 7 shirt in that game against Sheffield Wednesday?
Red? No. Paul Bernard.
Wrong, it was Neil Adams. When was Chaddy the Owl introduced as a mascot?
Crikey. It's got to be the Premier League. So I'd say 92-3 season.
It was 89-90. Who did Latics knock out of the League Cup in 1986, 1987 and 1989?
Leeds United.
Correct. What colour was Latics away kit in 2011-12?
I'm going to say yellow and blue.
It was black. Who was sent off on his second home debut versus Arsenal in October 1993?
Second home debut.
I've started to finish. You can still answer.
He said pass.
Oh, did he?
Mike Milligan.
Wrong. I'll come back to it. So let me top. You didn't do too badly there, actually.
No.
You got 1, 2, 3, 4 correct with 2 passes, I think. Les Pogliacomi had an injury hit season 04-05. Can you name another goalkeeper used that season? Matt?
Miss Kelly?
No, it was Craig Mawson or Steve Mildenhall.
Oh, yeah, of course.
Who was sent off on his second home debut against Arsenal in October 1993, Matthew?
Does that mean it's in his second spell?
Yes. Second debut. You got to have a second spell to have a second debut.
Yeah. Rick Alden.
Correct. For pushing over Lee Dixon. Very good.
Right.
4.
So 4 is not bad. That. No, that's good.
Yeah,
that's
I'll say that.
Yeah. Right. Well, listen, we can't guarantee that it's going to be a promotion party, but we are having a party at the end of the season.
On Saturday, 18th of May, we proudly present Trophy Chest,
the second annual Boundary Park Alert System Awards and end of season party.
At last year's event, we presented Big Mark Fondup with his Goal of the Season award and Joe Yarni with his Player of the Year award.
But who will win these coveted awards this year? Make sure you're there at the Cotton Rooms in Oldham at what Sexy Dave describes as
a potentially star-studded potential promotion event.
With music from fantastic live band The Rays, the Latics Mine Final, interactive games, varying quality prizes, and all the usual nonsense.
Last year's event sold out, so grab your tickets now from ofcpodcast.co.uk/shop to avoid disappointment.
Tickets cost just £20, and this includes a very tasty pie supper.
Don't miss Trophy Chest!
Yeah, that's what me and Dave do in our spare time. I can't. Is it too late to arrange a reunion of American TV cops for Trophy Chest, Dale?
It is. Well, our bass player lives in Australia anyway, so you'll have
such
quite
a
a way to
shame.
come. Yeah,
that would have been an exclusive. Maybe we could have got Steve Lamack down as well.
Yeah.
Oh well, never mind.
maybe next year when we go up.
Maybe next time. Yeah, promotion party. Right, that's it. We made it through an hour.
I've just had the text alert to say that the highlights from yesterday are available, so I should be rushing off to watch those as soon as
yeah, well, it shouldn't take very long to get through them, that's for sure. So, yeah, right. Well, listen, how long are you back in the country for, Dale?
A couple of months. I'll probably be here till August.
Oh, right. Well, we'll catch up then. We'll see each other, I'm sure, at a game or whatever, or at Trophy Chest.
Yes.
You can make it to that. Andy, thanks very much, mate.
Nice. Cheers.
For joining us, as always. Thanks to you too, Dale. And let's just hope that we're going to have a very, very happy Easter. Thank you for listening to the Boundary Park Alert System, a QPod production hosted and produced weekly by Matt Dean, Andy Halliwell and Dave Bradley. QPod is Oldham's only dedicated podcast production company, and if you'd like to learn more about how podcasting can help take your brand to the next level, visit kupod.co.uk. A huge thank you goes to all those people who subscribe to the podcast on Spotify. We really appreciate you all. Please visit ofcpodcast.co.uk and click Be a Supporter or find the link in the show notes if you'd like to help us fund the show. It's only $2.99 per month to subscribe, but if you'd rather make a one-off donation, please visit buymeacoffee.com/OAFC podcast or click the link on our website. Don't miss the Latics Football Phone-In every Wednesday live from 8:30pm. Please visit youtube.com/@OAFC podcast and do hit subscribe while you are there. You can also follow and interact with us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram and TikTok @OAFC podcast. Big thanks go to Eileen Finnegan for writing our excellent weekly blog, which we encourage you to read on our website every Saturday morning, and also to Paul Prendergast for providing us with all the Latics Mind questions. The title music for the show is by Manchester DJ and producer Starion, and for more information visit bandcamp.com/Red Laser Records. If you'd like to be a guest or contribute to the show, we would love to hear from you. Until then, see you next time.